So I think we're all in agreement that we have 24 hours in the day. And depending on what we give our attention to within those 24 hours, it can greatly and does greatly shape our lives and our existence and how and when we exchange with people and what we exchange with people. Now we have 4 tools which are highlighted in the suits of the tarot. We have the pentacles, we have our physical body, right? We have the cups, which is our emotional realm or our energy in motion, that which engages us. We have our sword or our mind, our element of air, our ability to communicate our thoughts and our ideas and how we feel. Communication, quite literally. And then finally, we have the wands, which is our will, our motivation, our force, and how we engage, right? Our fire. Now, a lot of us have likely been spending a lot of time in the realm of the mind, which can be paralyzing in a lot of ways because we can brainstorm and think about all kinds of possibilities, but until we actually take action, that's all they really are, is ideas and possibilities and what ifs. And we also have, the realm of the heart, and whether or not we follow our heart can also greatly shape our existence and how we stir up that environment with our thoughts or with where we get fixated in our thoughts versus if we actually move the body, right? If you spend a lot of time outdoors physically, that can bring about a great balance for the mind and the emotions and, of great benefit to the body itself. So we have these 4 tools that all of us have access to, but whether or not they work together or work against each other can put us in some different states in our lives. Now, before I jump into the cards for this week, I'm going to just walk through where the planets are placed and some things that I feel are interesting about where the planets are particularly placed right now is that a lot of them are moving into new energies. So first off, we have the sun that just moved into the sign of Cancer, right? It moved into the sign of Cancer on Saturday, on the 21st of June. It will be in the sign of Cancer for the next 29 days. We also have Jupiter, who's also in the beginning stages of Cancer. Now, Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. Every planet has a natural rulership over a sign, and then they also have signs that they are exalted in and kind of flow really easily with, and signs that are the opposite of that, where they have their fall, where their energy is more constricted and can be more challenging. So Jupiter just moved into the sign of Cancer, which is where it is exalted. It is in its fall in the sign of Gemini. Now, Jupiter brings about expansion into whatever area of our lives that it's currently in. And so it likes being in this area of Cancer. It likes to bring expansion into celebrations of family, gatherings and friendships and our tribe. Now, it's going to be in this sign for roughly the next year because it takes Jupiter 12 years to move around this zodiac wheel. Now, we also have Mercury also currently in Cancer. Now, it's one of the faster moving celestial bodies. It takes 88 days to move around this wheel. So it's going to be in here pretty briefly, right? It's not going to be in that sign for a very long time. We also have Mars, which just moved into Virgo. Now, Mars takes about 2.5 years to move around this whole zodiac wheel. It will be in the sign of Virgo until August 6th. So it'll be bringing about some kind of action in the area of like how you live your day-to-day life and your day-to-day routines and what things you feel like you need to trim the fat on or, recalibrate on to be in better alignment with where you feel like you want to go, because Mars is the action-oriented planet. And it's going to be bringing about some changes and some shifts in the sign of Virgo in your personal chart. Now, we also have Neptune and Saturn over here in the beginning stages of Aries. Now, consider that Saturn takes roughly about 29 and a half years to move around this whole zodiac wheel. So it will be in the sign of Aries for about 2.5 years. Neptune, in comparison, takes 165 years to move around this whole zodiac wheel. So it will be in the sign of Aries for quite some time. But they will be kind of paired aside with each other for at least a couple of months as they kind of step into this new energetic of Aries. We also have this alignment happening right now with Venus and the moon. Now the moon is in its waning stage because it will be in its new moon phase on the 25th in just a few days when we won't be able to see the moon at all. It'll be a dark moon. But right now it's in this crescent phase aligned with Venus. So they're having a conversation. Venus would be like your grandmother or your mom that wants you to have everything that you've ever wanted, wants you to have the best food, wants to make sure that you're fed, wants to make sure you're taken care of, wants to make sure you have the bedding that you need, and all the things that make you feel good in life. Like that would be Venus. And it's having this conversation with the moon in the sign of Taurus. Now consider that Taurus governs our resources, our values, our agricultural system, our finances. And we've had Uranus over here moving through the sign of Taurus since 2019. Now, Uranus is a planet of unexpected, unavoidable changes. You can get an idea of what it looked like to have Uranus and Taurus if you look back historically around 84 years ago. Like what changes were happening then and how is that coincidentally being mirrored and reflected with what's happening now. You can draw some conclusions on your own about that. But having these two celestial bodies in conversation right now at such close proximity is like Venus is looking at what we need to let go of, what we need to reduce in our life so that we can put more time and energy toward that which we value. We also have the Sun and Jupiter, which are in close conjunction right now. They'll actually be in exact conjunction in a couple of days. Now, whenever the Sun and Jupiter come into specific alignment, it's considered the luckiest day of the year. Now, next year, when the Sun and Jupiter come into alignment, they'll be in a different sign because Jupiter takes 12 years to move around this whole zodiac wheel. And next year, it will be in the sign of Leo, which is not where it's exalted and not where it rules. So we have this kind of beneficial aspect happening right now with the Sun and Jupiter. So there's some level of expansion that's happening in the area where Cancer is sitting in your natal chart, which is kind of lucky right now, or it's bringing about some kind of change and shift in your life, which will ultimately benefit you because Jupiter is considered the Santa Claus of the zodiac. It brings expansion to areas. So these interesting aspects are something that is influencing all of us, and it's going to be influencing you more directly depending on where you have planets in your natal chart. Now, the things that are showing up for the reading today are being highlighted by this energetic of Mars and the energetic of Venus, because we have both the Justice card and the Emperor that have shown up onto the table today. Now, when it comes to the reading, we start off with the long question. We have 4 swords. 3 of them are framed up on the wall behind us, and 1 of them is in alignment with our spinal column beneath us. Now, 4 of Swords is a very stable card, but it brings about stability in a realm of the suit of the swords, which is the mind. So it can bring about some kind of like almost paralysis or being kind of imprisoned by the mind because they're fixated on what they need to do, what they should do versus what they feel like they're called to do. And that can be confining in a lot of ways, right? In the card, we see all kinds of different hues of gray and only a kind of colored stained glass window. And so it's hinting to this kind of isolation that happens with the mind when it's always weighing things and measuring things, and it's stuck in that aspect of its toolbox, so to speak. Now, I think that's interesting because Jupiter just moved out of the realm of the mind, and so did the sun, because Gemini it governs that aspect of us. And so in the last year, we had this kind of expansion in whatever area Gemini is in your chart, which was very overwhelming, that made us really reconsider our values and where we put our time and attention, and if it's actually going to bear any fruit to be fixated on putting our energy and time in that area. Things are up in the air, quite literally. Our challenge for this week is the 8 of Wands, where every wand is up in the air. We're not sure where to put our energy and our effort, where to put our will. There's a lot of things that are in motion, and we won't have any stability until some things land. And there are a lot of unknowns right now. And we can really pontificate in all of the different directions of where any of these wands could take us, but until something lands, it's just quite literally a waste of time. It's a waste of worry. It's a waste of, weighing things that we might not ever have to deal with. And so we have to let things get grounded in a lot of ways. There's a lot of information that's still coming in. These 8 wands could be arrows of love. They could be arrows of communication. They can be all kinds of things that are still coming towards us and moving toward us that are things that are unknown. And that's the challenge, because how do you plan for things that are unknown? Well, you can't. You really just have to take things one day at a time. Now, the way through the challenge came in by way of the Justice card. Now, the Justice card is a cardinal air sign hinting to the energies of Libra. Now, this is the realm of we instead of me. It's the realm of relationship. It's the realm of active communication and exchange that is balanced. So we see the queen in this picture has one sword that is angled towards the sky, and it has a little fire on the tip to it because she's waiting for some kind of divine information to come in. In her other hand, she has a scale which is equally balanced. And so she wants to be just, right? She wants to be fair. She has to weigh all information and all components in order to come up with a decision. And that's the way through, right? We have to not let ourselves be overly emotional. We have to take in all the information that we see and that we witness before we make any change, before we make a commitment. And that's what Justice does, is she makes a commitment to a situation. She has a contract, and she considers others outside of just herself. Now, the ultimate outcome that we have that's showing up for this week is a combination of cards. First of which is the 4 of Cups. So we see another 4 showing up in the reading, another stable number. And yet here we have someone who's contemplating emotional outcomes. They have 3 cups standing upright in front of them, and one that is literally coming in out of thin air, out of a possibility. Now, 3s are numbers of ideal situations, and having this 4th cup come in from the unknown is hinting to some kind of possibility that could have everything that we possibly want, right? Not just what we already know. So this is contemplating something new, something outside of what we've already experienced, but of the emotional realm. And hinting to the idea of where we place the measure and quantification of our happiness. Do we place it on external factors or relationships and how we exchange with people? Or is it really an inside job, right? Where does your happiness come from? And is it really based on, having all the players and actors in the world do as we want in order for us to be happy? Or are we happy despite what all the actors in the world do? Do we allow people to have control over our center versus do we have a boundary around that so that it's not as easily swayed and impacted or triggered by external conditions and external environments? This is a place that we're contemplating in our emotional sense of things. That is further clarified by two additional cards, the first of which is the Emperor. Now, this is an Aries, associated card, which is also hinting to the energetic of Mars. Now, this highlights two different things as far as what's going on with the planets in the sky right now. First of all, we have Neptune and Saturn, which are in close conjunction in the beginning phases of Mars, of Aries. And Aries is our sense of self, right? And we have Neptune, which is like the ultimate possibility and like dream-like illusions. And then we have Saturn, which is responsibility and limitation. And we have these two energetics kind of coming into conversation that they're going to be in for several weeks with each other as they go through this area of Aries. Now, Aries is the sign that's like where we mature from, the young, inexperienced self to the mature adult self, where we go from lowercase s to capital S in the word of self. How we evolve and mature through life and what calls us to that, what calls us to engage in life, what calls us to respond. How do we grow up? And that's really interesting to me because we have Mars, which just entered the realm of Virgo, which is how we live our day-to-day lives, our day-to-day routines, and where we may even sabotage ourselves with our daily actions, our preventative health, whether or not we even have it, right? Like, do we exercise or do we just sit on our couch and doom scroll, right? What can we adjust and what actions are we being called to task on in our day-to-day lives, which are asking us to level up and have a better sense of responsibility when it comes to our sense of self? And that's pretty key, considering that it's in this realm of Virgo, and then we have Saturn and Neptune sitting in the area of Aries, which is where Mars's natural home. So this is asking us, where do you have to bring order to things? Where are you feeling called to task? Where are you feeling your inner fire be lit up and being asked and called to engage? That's really on the table for the next month and a half as Mars goes through the sign of Virgo. And especially as towards the end of its time in Virgo, it will be going over the South Node, which is in Virgo, which is that which we need to let go of, that which we need to cut loose in our own self and in our behavior as far as like how we've identified our sense of self and what we need to remove or detach from. So some powerful things in that way, especially as it will, be in a trine relationship with Uranus when it kind of crosses over that point or in close proximity. Now, the final card that we have this week is interesting, especially because we had the Justice and the Emperor on the table for this week, which are basically like partners in the tarot. They're Aries and Libra, which are the realm of relationships, self and other. And we have our final card being the Two of Cups, which is one of the more positive cards in the deck. But I think it's also highlighting where you lend your energy and if it's reciprocated back to you. Now, I will admit I've been pretty much gone for the last week and a half when it comes to engaging with a lot of things that I would normally engage with. And that's because my dog was hit by a truck about 12 days ago, right in front of my house. And I've been giving him all of my attention, and I basically dropped off of work and dropped out of a lot of my responsibilities so I could tend to my dog. And he basically took the hit on the front of his face and had his nasal passages like crushed and his bottom jaw broke completely in half. And so he has wire that's currently holding his bottom jaw together, and wire that's holding his top jaw together so that it can heal and reform over the next 3 months. And it's been interesting because I'm not one who typically asks for help with anything. And I had someone start a GoFundMe for him, and people have contributed, which has been like a huge relief financially. And I've also seen how people step forward and how people engage when you're in a hard time. Like some people will just completely disappear. They'll like try to get your attention, try to hang out, and then if something goes rough, they're just gone. They can't be around, right? And then other people, like I haven't heard from in a year or haven't talked to in a few months, and they found out through the grapevine this was happening, and they tracked me down to see if they could help in any way. I've had people buy him dog food. I've just had a lot of people show up in ways that I would have not expected, because I am not one who usually asks for help. But it's interesting to have this card show up, because it is showing like where people reciprocate in relationships and where true friendships are, and how people show up and in what ways they show up. And I think we're all kind of going through that right now, in that we are measuring the exchanges that we have in life and which ones are true exchanges, and which ones are true friendships. And we're reevaluating that. We're reevaluating a lot of things and making changes and adjustments and recalibrations so that we have people in our lives that support us emotionally and mentally and in conversation. And a lot of these changes are coming up to the table so that we can choose where we put our energy, where we invest our time, where we share time versus where we spend it. And how that exchange works out. And we can look at it in ways that aren't even just over the telephone. Like if you do a lot of social media, like, is that a good exchange? How do you feel after you spend a lot of time on social media? Is it fruitful for you? Is it satisfying for you? Or is it something that's sabotaging your energy from directing it towards something that actually is going to be nourishing and fruitful and satisfying for you by way of this life? Because everything is changing really, really fast. And it's important for us to have people in our lives that value who we are and support who we are, and that sometimes even question what we do because they care. Because that's what people do when they care. So yeah, kind of a heavier reading this week a little bit because of what's going on with my dog. I'm definitely a weeping maple tree. But if you have it in your heart and want to send Yoda, aka Mr. Boots, a good wish and some prayers, we appreciate it a lot. And yeah, he's doing really well considering what he's been through. He is kind of bummed right now because he can't really play with his mouth, and he is part healer and part blackmouth cur, and he loves to carry things around with his mouth and play tug and pull on my boots and do all kinds of things with his mouth, and he's not allowed to do that for several months, which is hard on him. So if you could send him some love, we would appreciate it. And I send you some love and a good wish and a lot of gratitude for showing up for me. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now.